could join us this evening. My name is Laura. I am the Education Outreach Supervisor for MDIFW. Here we have Lee Kantar, our moose biologist, with us as well. If you haven't joined us before on Zoom, just a couple housekeeping things to help you out as we go over this adaptive hunt info session and Q&A. In the chat function, if you want to write in anything, if you have any questions as we're going along, anything that you'd like to know more about as we're discussing all the different issues and information about the adaptive hunt, please write it in the chat and we will go ahead and get to those either as we're going or towards the end. But shouldn't take too long. Lee's got some great information here for us, so I'll just turn it right over so we can get started. So take it away, Lee.
All right. Well, I'm going to put up a couple of slides here, but before I do that, I want to congratulate everybody who drew a permit. And regardless of where that permit is, to me, it's a pretty exciting time. And it's always a lot of fun to be able to get a permit and start thinking right away about how that's all going to go. So I'm going to share the screen and we'll get this information session going. We got that, Laura?
Yeah, it just loaded. We can see it in the outline view.
All righty. All right, so for everybody out there, hopefully you're tuned into the right thing here, which is just to give you some information about the adaptive hunt and some kind of special things about it, and give you the opportunity to ask questions about this, so you can make sure that you're ready for it and all that. So really, we're going to talk about what an adaptive hunt is. Really, that's going to be just a couple of slides. Then we're going to go right into the logistics and expectations for you as a hunter and what the department needs from you during this hunt. And then we'll take some questions. So, you know, this adaptive hunt is something that is going to be the first year, 2021. It's actually going to be 3 consecutive weeks of antlerless hunting, meaning you can take an adult cow or either a male or female calf, no antlers. The unit is the western side of District 4. I'm going to show you guys a map exactly where that is, and we'll talk about that. The 3 consecutive weeks are important. That typically doesn't happen. So you're going to have one 6-day hunt, run into the next 6-day, run into the next 6-day. So people who are out there hunting and staying out in the woods, people will be coming and going. But we've tried to reduce how many folks are out there by splitting you into a southern zone and a northern zone. And again, I'll show you that on the map. But this whole thing is about reducing the number of moose in that part of District 4 to see if we can break the winter tick cycle. And many of you might have listened to me talk about this before. There'll be some information on this in the adaptive hunt packet that people will receive. But this is really wildlife management defined. This is actually taking action to try to accomplish something, and something that we're going to measure over time. And we can talk more about that if people have questions as well. But you can see this is my nice gruesome picture of my hands on a dead moose and the number of ticks on one part of a moose. It's crazy, and they can kill calves trying to make it through their first winter. And so we want to see if we can do something about this, and reducing moose density to a lower density. And it's pretty high density up in District 4 is one way to look at that over this 5-year period. So really critical to implement this now and not continue to wait years from now to try to do something. All right, so antlerless hunting, a lot of people talk about hunting cows and the purpose of that. That is the only way to reduce a population of moose. And you cannot do a moose hunt and bear that all on the back of bull moose. You can't just hunt bull moose. That can distort sex ratios over time. If you really hammer those bulls, you can change that bull age structure. And Mainers like to have plenty of old bulls out there with big antlers. So you got to take out cows, and calves are part of that as well. And again, male or female calf, male calves going into their first fall have no bony antlers, little bumps up here, but nothing else. This is going to be a different type of hunting. You'll hear me say this over and over again. There's not going to be calling any of these moose in. Maybe somebody can try that. That's not going to probably be productive when you get into the first hunt is October 18th. So you're right getting past the point of estrus. I mean, thinking about this out loud, there's still going to be cows and younger cows maybe coming into heat even then. So there's some possibility out there, but that's not something I bank on. This is going to be much more like deer hunting, where you're going to go in, you're going to figure out through scouting, looking at maps, looking at Google Earth, where there's good moose habitat, which is basically this whole area. You're going to look at your road systems, but you're going to be out there finding fresh, hot sign where there are cows, and you're going to be looking for those. So it's going to be a different hunt. We're going to have higher hunter densities. We've had hunter densities as high as this before in districts 2 and in district 3, depending on how you slice it. So it seems like a lot of hunters to pack into the south and northern zone. And that will be challenging if people are spending their time, riding roads. And that's just not the way to do this. And we would highly discourage this, because not only is it going to be problematic trying to find moose just by riding up and down roads, but you're going to ruin other people's hunt. I mean, there's no question about it. And you will talk more about this as well. You cannot block a road. People need to be sensitive to this. And we're very fortunate in the North Maine woods that the landowners up there are very, very supportive. They want to see this happen. They're basically opening up more campsites than ever before for people to camp at. Certainly people can pay to stay at a lodge or a remote outfitter. There's a few of those up there. They can stay at these places outside of District 4 and get in there. But it's going to be really important for people to think hard, starting right now, about where they're going to stay and how they're going to do this, and think this through, because there'll be a lot of folks going up in there. District 4 on that western side, again, I'll show you the map. There are not a lot of main haul roads, okay? There's definitely some main haul roads that people can go down to get off to other roads and spur roads and this and that. But, really a better way of doing things is to scout those things out and have multiple options. So if you go in and you say, I'm going to hunt the Foss Road or something, and you have that in your mind, and you drive in some morning and there's a truck already parked there, you want to have a plan B, C, D, and E to go someplace else. And there should be plenty of room to roam, excuse me. And a lot of these systems, I always like, it's more like, if you find a road that you can't get into on a truck, but it's a good road, that's a perfect road to be hunting moose on and looking for sign. And I don't think you're going to have to get that far in there to go after these cows. So you guys, I'm going to go to the next slide because I want to show this. Let me see. Well, I'll continue here, but there's some important dates for you to recognize here, which is whether you're new to moose hunting in Maine or have done this a million times, you have until July 20th to get on and swap a permit for a different management district or season. Now those, if you do a swap with another moose hunter, that paperwork has to be signed, sealed, delivered to Augusta before the 20th. So you need to be thinking about this now. If you decide that this adaptive hunt sounds great to you, hang in there. That's fantastic. We like that. We will have a mandatory pre-hunt briefing on August 11th, just like this, where we will go into a little bit more detail about looking at distinguishing marks between bulls and cows. We'll talk about the road system and hunting. We'll talk about it a little bit more. And then there'll be a survey afterwards where you need to answer 10 questions, which will hammer those questions. So we know we're all talking about the same thing. And then you got to send that in to get your permit. Adaptive moose hunters, if they shoot an adult cow, yearling or older cow. So think about this as most of these cows, you need to get the ovaries. There's 2 of them, and you need to bring them in. Because we are doing this adaptive unit, because we're doing this from a scientific perspective to reduce moose densities and try to reduce the impact ticks have on our moose. If we're doing that at this time of year, then if we can get those ovaries from you guys, bring them to the check station, that tells us a lot about reproduction in cow moose. Very, very important. So please pay attention to that. We got videos on the internet. In the adaptive hunt packet, there will be a flyer all about how to get the ovaries. We have all kinds of ways. Give me a call. I can't walk out there with every one of you, but I'm happy to help any way that we can. Also, different than any other moose hunt, we are going to operate 4 registration stations at key points: Clayton Lake, the Thoroughfare, which is on the Poulin Road, 20-mile checkpoint, which is on the 20-mile or northern road as you leave the Golden Road and head south. And then right on the Golden Road heading towards Millinocket, at Caribou Checkpoint, we will also have a station. We will have big metal signs there that say Moose Check Station, Moose Hunter Stop, and we'll have somebody there to both register your moose electronically and get that done, as well as take some biological information on those moose and weigh those moose as well. So many of you who are probably watching have spent lots of time in the North Maine woods, but it's not going to hurt to emphasize and reiterate this stuff, which is this particular hunt is completely in the North Maine woods along the border of Quebec. You will be required when you go in, whether it's for the day or typically overnight, to pay a fee through North Maine woods to get in there. So if you don't know that, now you know that there is a fee to get in there. There is no service in these areas, meaning you can't get gas, food, or water unless you get it from a stream or river or lake, and you pump it to make sure it's good to go. And you can't get ice, so you need to plan ahead for all these things, depending on the hunt, how the hunt goes. I did my moose hunt in 2014 in District 4 as well. I figured out where I wanted to go. I put a circle around the area within a few miles of where we were staying. And I said to my buddy, we're not going to hunt anyplace else. This is where we're staying. And I brought a couple of jugs of five gallons of gas. I never needed them, but you don't want to be spinning a lot of gas out there in a big truck and just driving from point A to B all over creation. Camping is limited. However, like I already pointed out, the landowners have been very gracious at opening more areas to camp. So these areas are something where people can bring in a trailer. They can tent out, sleep in the back of their truck, whatever works best for you. This is minimum impact camping. A lot of the sites in the North Maine woods, as you know, do have latrines or outhouses. Some of these sites that are likely going to be opened up for the adaptive hunt will not have latrines or outhouses. I do believe, and I got to check this, Laura, as well, that they may actually bring into some of these areas some porta-johns as well, which is a pretty big deal that they're going to do that. But it's important. These landowners, this is private land. They're allowing access to us. This extends throughout the whole North Maine woods, and we need to be good stewards, good caretakers. We need to thank these people for allowing this access over time, and not just for moose hunting. Again, in the North Maine woods, once you go through the checkpoints, you cannot reserve a site. I'm sure the people at the gates, at the checkpoints, are going to be asked a million questions. I was thinking of camping out at Baker Lake. Is anybody in there right now? And I'm not sure how well they'll be able to answer that or not. But it's going to be, that may prove to be a little bit of challenging. But again, there's going to be lots of spots up in there where people are going to be able to find a place to camp. And of course, as each day of the week goes on, the weekend will be busy with people arriving and maybe people leaving. But of course, as each person takes a cow, that's going to be one less hunting group out there. But you might want to think about this hunt, if you haven't already, of reducing your group size. Many of you who've done these moose hunts for years know that, there's some groups that come in and they got 20 people with them. My advice would be, based on the logistics and everything else, is to keep your hunting party as small as you can. But by all means, we want you to have a great time. I mean, this is part of our outdoor heritage. So hunt your hunt and do it the way you can, but just keep that in mind. Now, remember too, when you enter the checkpoints and you go into the North Main woods, that logging trucks, if they're hauling, logging trucks, company trucks, they have the right of way. They're not waiting for you. You need to get out of their way. This is one of the most dangerous things that we experience in the North Main woods. And, I work on moose a lot more in the wintertime on these roads. And when a big truck is bearing down with a load of logs, I'm going to get out of the way through hell or high water. It's just the way it is. So pay attention. There's obviously, if you haven't been up there, there's tricks of the trade. If it's dusty out, you're always looking ahead down the road prism to see if there's dust being kicked up someplace else. If you have a MERS radio or CB, the truck traffic is on there. People are required typically in the far north to call out their markers, the mile that they're at, and which direction they're heading on what road. That's not expected of moose hunters, but it's something to be aware of if you do have a radio that you can listen in on this. But it's really important to know where you are. Everybody should have a main atlas or go buy one. That's going to demarcate the roads that we're going to show you. Some roads have different names and different names when you're out there in the woods. But that's a great asset, is to have the main atlas. But it's very important on these roads to be careful. Another thing that some people don't always think of is, if you're going to stop and you're going to park your vehicle, get off the road and park in a spot where you have a clear line of sight behind you and a clear line of sight in front of you. Because if somebody's coming down a road and you're parked on a hill on a corner, your nice truck's going to get creamed, and that's not going to be fun. So it's always good to keep in your mind, where am I parking? And when you pull over, what am I pulling over into? In the fall, conditions are typically dry and the roads are pretty solid, but there's plenty of sad sob stories, and I can give you a couple of those where you pull off 1 foot on the side of the road and you're sunk, and then you're trying to get your truck out and change a tire and do everything else. So some things to consider, and just make sure there's lots of rules and regulations. Everybody who does this hunt should be on the North Main Woods website to check out all the information they have. So the framework of this hunt, as you all probably know, is, again, it's 3 weeks, hunt weeks in a row. Your hunt is a 6-day hunt, just like traditionally, Monday through Saturday. There is no overlap with a bull hunt. There is no bull hunt during these 3 weeks. And that's really important, because the department, by law, we changed what a bull and cow is. I know this sounds silly, but we had issues in the past during the antlerless season with small points being legal. That is not legal anymore. A cow is a cow, or a male or female calf with no hardened antlers. You cannot have antlers. So if you're nervous about that at any time, you want your hunting sub-permittee or partner to have binoculars with them, even in the North Main woods, and make sure you're looking at the same thing. So you see the layout here of the hunts, October 18th through 23rd. If you're not familiar yet with, and I'm guessing all of you know what these letters stand for, but your W on that is telling you that you have a permit for the adaptive unit. And 1 is going to be the first week, 2 is going to be the second week, 3 is going to be the third week, N is for north, and S is for south. And these are your hunt weeks here. Note that during the October 25th to 30th week, things are going to be a little bit more complicated, because you adaptive moose hunters, there'll be less of you, 75 in the north, 75 in the south, but there will be an additional 100 permits across the entire unit for antlerless permittees, who are probably going to mostly hunt the eastern part of District 4, but they're legally allowed to come into the adaptive unit. So that's the way it is. That's the way we broke it down. We spent a lot of time trying to piece this all out, and we had some challenges because there's lots of sideboards with trying to get this done the best we can and work with the landowners and everybody on this. So here's the map, and I'm going to show you an even bigger map. So District 4 as a whole is about 2,000 square miles. It's a pretty significant size unit from south to north and from east to west. The west is the Quebec border. and the east is essentially the Allagash Wilderness Waterway for the most part. When you get down to the southeast corner, that's Baxter State Park. The adaptive unit is 1,000 square miles, give or take. And of course, we divided it into a north and south unit. Here's the north and south unit a little bit up close. And I kind of wrote down here, sorry about that. The north and south divider, the big divider that's important, is the St. Aurelie Road, which goes right through and right by Baker Lake. That's a very, it's a pretty good sized road for the most part. Up east of Baker Lake, there's some hills in there and some blind spots people need to be very careful of. But it's a pretty decent road, and it's the main haul road east to west to Quebec. Out here on the eastern flank, you wind up meeting with the St. Just Road, and there's a pretty big intersection here. There's the Cockmagomic Road as well. And these are all road, all these roads that you see listed on the right go from south to north, starting down here where my cursor is, going up the 490 road. These are all very easily recognized roads. They all correspond to the main atlas, so you can look at the main atlas. As you get up here, there's a couple of connector roads when you go west of Ross Lake, as you get up to the Maybeck connector up here, which is the Reality Road. And so for those hunting the adaptive unit north and those hunting south, you really want to be spending some time looking at the maps, looking at these road systems, making some decisions as to where you're going to go, and if you're going to camp, where you're going to camp. And again, we're going to be providing more information on this. And you will receive a hunt packet with all this stuff in it after the swap period. So we're talking the end of July, you'll get a packet with a bunch of information. There will be links to the website, our website with information. There'll be links to the North Main Woods, but we'll do everything we can to get that information out to you so you don't feel like you're being abandoned in any way. I know North Main Woods is creating some additional maps that I believe will be available at checkpoints that are going to show the additional campsites that aren't normally out there on a regular basis. So that's really, really generous of them. And we'll see how to make the best of it for everybody with this. So the last thing I just want to tell you is these next steps. Again, you have until really before July 20th to decide whether you're going to keep your adaptive hunt permit or whether you're going to try to swap that out. And I'm guessing there's going to be limits on what people can and cannot do. But your form that you fill out to do that swap with your other person, it's got to be into Augusta by July 20th, okay? And again, we'll mail out the information packet to you guys at the end of the month of July. August 11th, we will have the same setup as we're doing right now, where I'll talk some more about the moose hunt. And then once you complete the survey, the 10 questions, which we will underscore and underline and tell you all the answers to, once you send that in, then you'll be able to get that permit letter, which is typically sent out only a few weeks before the actual hunt. And I know people get pretty nervous about that, but the folks down in Augusta do a real good job, and they get over 4,000 of these to send out. So it's a lot of work for them as well. So we do always appreciate your patience. Just to sum up a couple of things, remember, where you camp, where you stay, whether it's with an outfitter or a lodge, or you stay at a hotel in Millinocket, or stay in Jackman or Greenville, wherever you go, plan ahead where you're going to be. Have lots and lots of options of where you're going to scout and hunt. Okay. Remember, a cow moose, I know it sounds silly to some people, and we're going to go into some ID identification, but we have enforcement issues every year during the cow hunt, and it's a serious thing. So a cow is legal, or a male or female calf. There are no antlers on a male calf, none. Okay. But obviously, for the most part, a calf is probably between 300 and 400 pounds come this October, November, maybe closer to 400. And they're legal, and it's a good thing, and you can take a calf. Remember, when you tag your moose, if the weather's warm, and I'm talking getting to 50 degrees, or if you are off the roads like you should be, consider doing a gutless method, quartering your moose, getting that moose out, and making that meat the best tasting moose meat this side of Kansas. Get it done. And we got videos on this. I like to tell people it's so easy that even a guy like me can do it. So it's a good way to go. But anyways, you got to bring out the 2 ovaries. You can stick them in a little plastic bag. If you have some doubts about it, you can bring out the whole uterus. If you are gutting the moose and doing it that way, when you cut up on the moose, you can take the udder or milk sac and you can cut around that and leave that to one side, and you'll bring that moose in with you. But for evidence of gender, which is required when you piece out a moose, cut up a moose, you can bring in the ovaries. That's your evidence of gender. You could leave the head of that cow out in the woods. Anyways, you come to the registration station. We'll do the electronic registration right there in the willy wax in the woods. And you need to remember to have your hunting permit with you, the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with your permit. You need to have your hunting license. Bring those with you. You'll provide that to the operator at the check station. Then we're going to ask you to locate on the main atlas where you shot that moose. It'd be really helpful for us if you knew where that was. And I'm not making fun of it, but people get pretty tangled up taking a right, left, right on some roads. But always good to know where you are. Always a safe thing to do. Always good to have a GPS and make that mark and location with you. After we register your moose, we'll pull a canine tooth for aging. We'll do a winter tick count pretty quick. We'll check lactation. If the udder's there, we'll grab your ovaries, not your ovaries, the cow's ovaries, and we'll have a system to weigh that moose out in the field. And again, please be patient whether it's a warm day or not. It takes a lot to operate these things. There'll be one person likely at the station. And if there's a line of people just need to be patient and relive how great your moose hunt was and how great your experience was. So we really appreciate your patience and support with all that. All right, so just the last thing I'm going to tell you, and then I can take any questions you have, is that, again, this adaptive unit is part of essentially a scientific study for the next 5 years. And we've been radio collaring with GPS collars, moose calves during the wintertime. This past winter, we lost 60% of our collared calves due to winter tick. That's what we're trying to get rid of. That's what we're trying to reduce and demonstrate whether that can be effective or not. And it takes a study like this to try to determine that. So we're going to still be collaring moose out there. In fact, you may run into a calf or an adult cow that has ear tags on it that was a study animal, and those are legal animals. Those you can harvest. There shouldn't be any up there with collars on it, but if you do, you just leave the collar on and come to the check station, you're good to go. So no problem there. So we'll collect information at harvest, like I told you, and me and the folks will continue. We do helicopter surveys each winter in that area to look at bull cow calf ratios and moose numbers. And we're going to keep that going to make sure that we can assess and measure what's going on in District 4 and specifically the adaptive unit. So thank you very much for listening. And Laura's going to help send any questions my way right now.
Yeah, definitely. That was really great. There have definitely been some questions coming in. So please make sure if you have questions, you can go ahead and write them in the chat. So just to get us started, somebody was wondering, what is the typical home range size of a cow?
Well, it gets much smaller during particular times of the year, but really during the fall, it's going to be a couple of square miles, and it could be even less. So we're talking 1 square mile to 2 square miles. Now, that can be impacted by people out there on the landscape, but I don't see that as pushing that cow to the other side of Moosehead Lake. But during the course of a year, a moose is going to have about a 10 square mile home range. But during the fall and during October, those cows, especially ones that have been bred, are going to be feeding and spending their time where there's lots and lots of food.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So you kind of hit upon this a little bit. You mentioned right at the end, but someone was wondering, so are you encouraging us to take a calf in order to help with the study?
Yes. Yep. So, it's, the whole calf question has been challenging as people can imagine, from a social standpoint. And there's many jurisdictions in Canada where, of course, moose hunting is king, where they actually have uh, every year regular calf seasons. Okay. In a situation like Maine, where winter tick is really affecting the calves most, they're not affecting these calves until January. And then that calf that has a really heavy winter tick load, like in this picture here, um, that calf that has a really heavy tick load winds up dying in April. So what I'm saying here is, during this hunt, those calves are still in prime shape, and those winter ticks are not impacting them in October, in November, and they'll have no impact on the quality of meat or you. But that means that's the best time to remove a calf, um, because that's part of the equation of trying to decrease any kind of population growth and reduce densities. So calf is a good thing. If there's a cow and a calf and you need to make the decision what you're going to do, if there's another party around, you can take the cow and the calf, or you just take the calf. Um, you make that decision. But absolutely, yeah, we'd encourage, so to speak, removing calves. And like I said, these calves should be pretty close to 400 pounds going into winter at this point. That's a good size. That's a good size animal.
No, that's a good clarification. And while we're on the size of a good size animal, so I was just looking for a clarification on being able to field dress and quarter the moose. They're saying you do not have to bring the entire animal to the check station. Is that correct?
You do not have to. Correct. By law, we changed that law years ago, that you need to bring out, essentially, it's all edible meat and evidence of gender. And so for this particular hunt, your evidence of gender would be the ovaries. If for some reason, after I badger and harass everybody about how important these ovaries are, for some reason you do not bring them in, you would need to have the head, or essentially the back end, that white vulva patch fur, to prove that you actually took a cow.
And to kind of go along, there's a second part with that. So then if you're
Okay.
packing out the quarters,
Yeah.
so you'll just need the ovaries, the location, and the tick count.
Well, that's a great question. Yeah. So what they're saying is, if you bring out all of the edible meat and the ovaries, yeah, we can't do a tick count. That's fine. I would, every single day, I would much rather you, as the hunter, and this is your hunt. Yeah, you take care of that moose. You take care of the meat. You bring out the evidence of gender, which is the ovaries. Fantastic. Don't worry about me and the ticks. No, that'll be just for people who decide to just gut the moose and bring out the entire moose. That's a great question to clarify. Yeah, so absolutely. Yep.
And someone was also wondering, what is the moose density in zone 4?
So we fly low-level aerial surveys. We have a statistical method of doing this. We flew this unit, not even the whole District 4, just the western side. And the year before, we flew the western side and the eastern side. This year, the western side was about 8 moose per square mile. Now, 8 moose per square mile is a crazy number of moose. Okay. Most North American moose populations exist at about 1 moose per square mile, and we're talking 8 times that. The last time, the year before, when we flew the east side, that was about half of that, 4 moose per square mile. That's a lot of moose, and there's so many moose that's the reason, in part, why we're here with the tick issue, and reproduction has been so low, trying to deal with this winter tick. So, yeah, high moose density, really.
All right, this next question is going to kind of probably play into that. So Someone's wondering if this is going to be as hard as deer hunting in that area to find the moose. Can you approximate the success ratio?
I can and I cannot. So the fact that we have so many different things going with 3 different weeks and the way that people hunt. So, there's no question based on all the work we've done in the woods, in the field, that there is a lot of moose out there. Now, that doesn't necessarily equate to making that hunt easy for an individual hunter. So some hunters are gonna, go out Monday morning and within a half hour, their hunt's gonna be done. And other people are gonna be concerned on Saturday, just like with the traditional hunt. Success rates in District 4 as a whole in the past have probably been anywhere between 60% and 80% during the cow hunt. And there's different reasons for that based on those 6 days. In other words, District 4 is a remote area, and I don't know how people plan for it, but there's a lot of driving that's done, which is not a great thing to do. We know that for years now, I work all the moose hunts. We get some hot weather, and the hot weather depresses everything. The moose tend to be hanging out in the dark growth, and people have to go get them. And so that's a challenge too. Now, on the flip side of that coin, as you can imagine, being in my place, especially in the North Country, I get lots of people saying year after year, they get a bull tag and they just can't believe they saw one bull and they've seen 20, 30, 40 cows, and it drives them crazy. So, but the unknown here is that you have 3 consecutive weeks. So how are moose behaviorally going to respond to that over the course of time? Then again, I can't sit there and say, well, week 1 versus week 3, which is gonna be better. We could get a few inches of snow at the end of October, which could help you, or it could be 80 degrees. It's crazy. So plan ahead and hunt hard, but it's going to be a lot more successful than your typical deer hunt, I would guess. For some people.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Without a crystal ball to help figure that out, that's pretty good and helpful information. And you were talking about, it could be hot, and people might want to drive around to do their moose hunting. People were wondering if any kind of 4x4 or 4-wheel or anything like that, side by side, might be allowed up in the North Maine woods.
No,
in that area.
No, you're not. There's the large landowners. There's no ATVs allowed. So again, you're up there with essentially a pickup truck. And I really think that, you go into an area where, and Mainers are pretty crafty, pretty savvy in the woods. You could wind up going up a road that's in pretty bad shape, thinking you got it to yourself, and then you wind up busting somebody who's in there on their hunt. So, those will present some challenges, but yeah, you cannot use an ATV.
Now that is very good to know, to be respectful of the landowners. And on that same note, you mentioned a little bit about the North Maine Woods is working on some more maps that are going to show some of these new campsites.
Yeah.
So people were wondering a couple of things. One, where are these going to be accessible? Are they going to be on the North Maine Woods website, these maps?
So right now on the website, there is a link to camping rules and regulations, and then there's a list of designated campsites which have privies, outhouses, whatever you want to call it, and then there's a list of campsites where you need a fire permit. So that means you would, on your hunt, you'd stop in whether it's Ashland or Greenville and make sure you get a fire permit for that area you're going to camp in. And then on top of that, and I don't quite know what it's going to look like, but they're going to open up additional areas. And I don't know, and we'll have these answers for the August 11th round, whether those additional campsites will be, how they'll be marked, and whether they'll be, what's the word for, privies, outhouses, what's there as well. Porta potties, there we go. But yeah, that information, I think they'll probably wind up putting on the website at some point as well, and they're making hard copies of these maps. So we and the landowners, our objective is to help you any way we can. So if those things are available and we can print them out or send them or whatever, we're going to get them in your hands. We want to get things in your hands so you're not left going, what do I do? So it's always good to ask these questions, and we'll find a way.
No, and that's good to know, to understand. A lot of us can be really reliant on our mobile phones and devices and things like that, that you don't want to rely on that cell coverage up there because it can be incredibly spotty. Yeah, you don't want to be relying on that. So having things printed off before you get there, knowing in advance. And I did put the North Main Woods website in the chat, but again, you're going to be getting packets, so just keep looking up and finding that information.
Yeah, and along that same line, I mean, a lot of people these days, there's several mapping programs out there now where, whether it's OnX or Basecamp, or there's several of them where you can really easily get a nice layer for this area, and you can get it on your phone or whatever, and you can still use it even when you're outside of Wi-Fi. I use these things all the time. Of course, you can get a GPS unit with topo maps on it. Those tend to show, sometimes they show the road, but not all the road systems. So when you have something like OnX or some other mapping program and you get an aerial type of photo, you can see where all the roads are, and it's pretty cool. Those are great things to have as well. That gets you past looking at the main atlas, but everybody should certainly take a peek at Google Earth. And that gives you really a good sense of what the country looks like and where the harvest blocks are and all that. So,
yeah, be prepared, but brush up on those navigation skills for sure. So speaking of different camping, people are wondering, are hunters going to be confined to these designated campsites? And or is there going to be any issues if someone, say, wanted to hike off an accessible road and camp in a non-designated area?
yeah, so all of the sites, in my understanding, will be accessible by road, right? So it's not like somebody's going to have to park someplace and hike their gear in someplace to camp. All these places are going to be on the road systems, and there's lots of places where there's a gravel pit or something like that they're going to open up and allow people to camp in. There's probably going to be landings, where there's been timber harvest, and they're trying to make sure that they have lots and lots of sites. Some of these sites will be sites where they'll allow multiple parties to camp, so people who don't even know each other. But my understanding of this, and we'll make sure we clarify this, is that there's going to be a lot of places for people to camp.
That's good to know. And just so everybody knows, I know you'll have some questions about fires and what's allowed up there, but you're going to want to, again, check in about getting those permits and what's going to be allowed for fires. You can check in at the North, you're saying you can check in at the North Main Woods, give them a call and stop at the checkpoint to get the permit. Was that what you were saying?
Well, for fire permits, if you're going to camp in the woods, in the North Main Woods, and you're not going to be at a designated campsite, you'll likely need to get a fire permit from the Maine Forest Service. And there'll be phone numbers that we provide, and that's also numbers and information on the North Main Woods site that you could call ahead and ask them about that if you're unsure. And you could say, yeah, we're going into the western side of District 4. Do I need a fire permit? And how do I get that? What's the easiest way to do that?
Excellent. And while we're talking about things like maps and what's allowed, people are wondering, do you have any forest age maps for that zone?
Forest age maps?
Yes.
No, in fact, that's always a challenge for any of us and biologists to do, because a lot of that information is proprietary for the private landowners in the commercial forestry. And that's why, the way that I look at that is that, I take Google Earth and look at when that area was harvested. And I know that when I get in there on the ground, it's probably going to look different than it does from Google Earth. But like I said, that's kind of the way I scouted the area originally when I did my 2014 hunt. And then once I was out there, I essentially went up on a Friday night, started scouting Saturday and Sunday for moose. And, pretty quickly you pick up on the difference between what you saw on Google Earth versus what there is on the ground. But, I mean, the whole entire unit has a lot of moose in it. And moose, yeah, they like to use areas where there's new growth coming up, but there's also lots of places where the trees have grown up quite a bit, and there's still a pretty good understory where moose have fed in there pretty heavily. In fact, the area where I shot my bull, I flew over that in a helicopter that winter over the spot, and I couldn't believe that's where I was, because from the air in the helicopter, not mine, but it didn't look like anything special. But I tell you what, on the ground, it was moosey as all get out, and it was a great area to hunt. So
Excellent. So people are definitely getting their wheels turning and thinking. Somebody was wondering, under the swapping policy, would they be able to swap with other adaptive hunters only, or can they swap with anybody?
well, we may have to follow up with them, but I believe that the hunt is the hunt, meaning you'd be able to swap with any season. When you read it on the website, and I can bring that up, we haven't made any stipulations for differentiating the two. So, I mean, if somebody has a hunt during the so-called traditional period and is willing to swap with you, I don't see why that would be an issue. But you guys probably can't see this, right, Laura? But I'm looking at how to swap moose permits on our website.
Yeah, no, we're not seeing that on the screen.
Yep.
We're seeing the exited PowerPoint just in outline form.
Yeah. Let's see if I can do this right here, but just look at something.
There we go. Yep.
But so this is on our website. This is a how-to. To me, it sounds like it's an agreement between the two people wherever their permits are. So I don't recall us ever talking about the adaptive unit being something different. It's just if somebody wants to swap, hey, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's always good to know. And if you do have more questions and you want to follow up with stuff like that after tonight, please definitely call, during the day, Monday through Friday, and our information center will either be able to answer that question for you, or they can go ahead and find somebody else who may be able to help. If even after tonight you still have more questions, and you can also send us questions, emails, and on social media as well. All right, so we do have a few more questions. Someone was on another question, and again, a lot of this information is on our website, but if they wanted to, like they couldn't make it, would they be able to let can I transfer my permit to my sub permittee if I can't make it during my designated week? Can they go on my stead?
I do not believe so. And that would need to be followed up with licensing folks. But if there's a issue where the hunter, the permittee themselves cannot hunt, they can call up Augusta licensing and ask for to be deferred. And I believe that's the way it is. I don't handle that side of the coin, but we can make sure, Laura, that we follow up with that person to make sure that we're correct with that.
Yes, we definitely can. And also, if you want to call our info center line 287-8000, they can help transfer you over to licensing if you are in need of working on something with your sub permittee or a swap if you're having questions of that kind. So please make sure you reach out. I'm going to put our contact page section in the chat, so that way if somebody would like to follow up, we can do that. Okay, so we're getting towards the end here. If people have any other questions, please make sure you're writing them in the chat. So a question to just come in: are people allowed to use tree stands?
Wow, that's a good question too, because that's going to be a question for North Maine Woods and the commercial landowners, whether they would allow that or not. Clearly you would not be able to put up any kind of a permanent stand or anything like that. But the question is going to be whether somebody has a climber or a hanging stand, and whether they're going to be able to do that or not. So we need to get back to this person with that. So if you got that information, Laura, we can make sure we have that person's contact information and let them know. But that's a great question.
Yes, I did put that the contact page information from our website into the chat. So please make sure you send us an email from that webpage if you would like us to follow up with you, just so nobody has to put their emails in the chat. Go ahead and just send us an email.
You know, my feeling is that should be on the North Main Woods rules and regulations page. And I'm guessing that anybody who can access that website could get information and call or email North Main Woods as well and pose that question to them. And they'd be able to answer that just as well, given that they're managing that whole system for the commercial growers.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I just put that North Main Woods website again in there as well. And just to remind everybody that you are going to be getting information soon, and you will get another packet at the end of July. I believe there is still plenty of time to get that subcommittee put in. There is a deadline. I do apologize for not knowing that deadline myself. But you should still have time to do that. But again, you can send us an email or give us a phone call for more questions about that. Oh, here's another fun question. Oh, you're going to show us some of the stuff on the North Main Woods?
Well, I was just going to see whether if you guys still seeing this share, I guess the share.
Yep, we are. Yep.
Yeah. I was just going to see if there was something in there that mentioned that, but it may not. Anyways, yeah, go ahead with the question though.
Yeah, and definitely follow up with North Main Woods for certain questions on what's allowed on the land there. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help you figure out what you can do to help you plan your trip. So the question was, what is the sex ratio in this zone for the moose?
Well, I mean, just like in the majority of management districts, it's always more cows than there are bulls. And I'm trying to think in my small brain, when we flew this year, we had a big increase in the bull to cow ratio. And I want to say it was pretty close to 70 bulls per 100 cows, but I wouldn't quote me on it, but pretty close.
All right, excellent. And one last question before we talk about the August 11th thing one more time is, why is it called an adaptive hunt?
Well, I mean, adaptive management is actually a fisheries and wildlife management term for, conducting a management action where instead of saying we're going to do this and we're going to do it this one way for the next 10 years and not budge, adaptive means that as you get more information about what's going on, you can change things as you need. So in other words, over the next 5 years, like our permit levels may increase or decrease. We may wind up having to change, the timing of it. We have more options in this adaptive hunt to learn by doing as each year goes by, to try to meet what our objective is with lowering moose density. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. The rest of our management in all the other units are guided by the big game management plan, which is a 10-year plan of how we're going to kind of operate and manage moose. So it's not set in stone per se, but it's a little bit more concrete and not quite as flexible as having an adaptive unit.
That's good, a little conservation biology insight there. And it's always going to be one more. We'll see. We're almost there. We're only going to take about 2 more questions, and then we are going to wrap it up. But we do promise that you can still reach out to us. I just put that contact link in there again, and you can also find us on social media and call us Monday through Friday. During business hours, you can go ahead and reach out to us. Can we use cameras to help us with scouting?
Well, that's going to be another question for North Main Woods and the landowners themselves. But that's a great question. If we take that question down, we can find an answer for them as well. I don't know whether, there are some folks who have camps up in that area. There are some outfitters and guide services there. And, that's a good question about whether you can use remote cameras or not.
That's a very great question. And I will make sure we save this chat. But again, the best way probably for us to follow up with you is to send us an email from that link that I sent you. But I will save this chat and we'll do our best to get that information back to you.
Yeah, you can see on this main page, this is the home page, North Main Woods, they're already talking about, the significant increase in parties for the adaptive hunt and making more room and some of the stuff people need to know there. So I can't quite find the thing about tree stands and all that, but we'll make sure we address that as well as time goes on. Tree stands, remote cameras, things like that.
Yeah, these are really great questions. And keep in mind that if you are, you're still planning to go ahead with this hunt in the adaptive area on August 11th, that is a mandatory meeting. It's going to be about an hour. Going over all the necessary information, and we'll take down a lot of these questions and hopefully be able to address them at that point as well. And if you can't make that, we will have a recording for you to follow up with. And there'll be that survey at the end to ensure that you did watch it and participated. So that's on August 11th at 6:30. And then there was one more question. This is going to be our last question of the evening, but again, you can always reach out to us more later. Where are the weigh stations going to be? They're saying that there are a lot of places are not weighing during that week. Now, you mentioned this a little bit before about where you were going to have some different check stations up there.
Yeah, so there's 4 check stations that we're going to be operating special for this hunt that everybody who is successful in harvesting a moose will go to these 4 stations. And so that's going to be Clayton Lake, which is right on the Reality Road. So these stations are all strategically placed because you're not going to go out through Quebec. So you're going to come back out through Maine. And if you're up north, a lot of people are going to come in on the Reality Road and they're going to go through Clayton Lake. So they check their moose there. The Poulin Road, which people may or may not be familiar with. There's a place there called the Thoroughfare, which is just up from the Sear Road, there's a crossing at John's Bridge to cross the Allagash Wilderness Waterway to get over towards the Telos country in District 4 and go down to Millinocket. And that's going to be a second option for people to register and get biological information on their moose and weigh their moose there as well at the Thoroughfare. If you're going more south and east, you're going to wind up going down and being filtered out down the Golden Road on your way to Millinocket, or even to go down through Kakadjo or something. And you must go to the Caribou checkpoint right on the Golden Road. And right at the checkpoint that North Main Woods has, we will have a station there to register your moose, do the bio data, and weigh the moose. And if you're going south and you want to go down through Jackman or Greenville, you would then need to go down off the Golden Road to the west and down South Branch to what's called the 20-mile or Northern Road. And there's a checkpoint right there, right at the at the North Main Woods checkpoint, and there's a warden camp there, and we'll be set up there as well. And so all of those places are way more easy and accessible to get to than any normal hunt that we have. You are none of those should be very far out of the way at all, depending on where people are going to get home. And again, they were strategically located, and they'll be set up, and there'll be a big sign there saying Moose Check Station, and they'll be pretty obvious, and we'll be waiting there for you.
Yeah, we're gonna try to make it as easy as we can for everybody. And then this really will be the last question of the evening. It seems like a nice, important question. They were wondering about the whole process. So going into this adaptive hunt, that they have a permit for this slightly different moose hunt. Are they able to apply for the moose permit next year, or do they have to go through the wait period?
Yeah, it's the same wait period. Yeah, because that stuff is all set by law and through the legislature. So we tried to figure out ways to do it differently. But as it stands right now, yeah, you'd sit out for three seasons. You can still accumulate your points, and wait, just like me.
Well, that is good to know, and it is really important. So we're glad we can help you guys with that question.
And let me, I'll say, the last thing I'll say is that, we're not trying to make this, we just want to make sure that everybody who participates in this hunt knows that it's going to be a little bit different, meaning that there's going to be a little higher hunter densities, 3 consecutive weeks. You got to listen to me again during the pre-briefing and answer some questions and get the ovaries out. But in reality, if you plan ahead, as all moose hunters should, it should be a great hunt in a beautiful part of our state. And if you're fortunate enough to tag out and get your moose, you're going to get some high quality moose meat. And I think it's all good. It's just that we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and understands what's going on. So feel free to send us questions or whatever, and we'll help you any way we can.
Yeah, we really appreciate everybody's excitement and interest in this, because it really takes everybody to help make this happen. So we appreciate it. And Lee, I promise this is the last question. I'm turning off questions, guys. If I knew how, just kidding. You can always keep sending us questions. I really appreciate them. You guys keep sending in one more good question. I'm like, oh, that's such a good one. We'll let you go in a few minutes, Lee.
Not worried.
Okay, good. Thank you. So say you go out and you get your cow or you get your calf, and it is just decimated with ticks. Is it safe to consume as a human? Can you still eat that meat?
Yes, and it won't be decimated with ticks. It's during October, November, the larval ticks are what are getting on the moose out there. They look like they're the size of a dry kernel of rice. And as far as all the work that we've done and with the medical folks, the winter tick does not carry any human pathogens. It's a different species than the deer tick. And those little tiny winter tick larvae will want to get off the moose once that thing starts to heat up and then cool down. And so there's no known impact to people at all. And again, like I had said earlier, those moose calves, if people decide to take a moose calf, everything's normal for that moose, and they're in their best condition going into winter. It's not until January, February, March, and then April when those winter ticks that are now very large adults are taking way more blood and wreaking havoc on the backs of these moose, especially young moose. So, that's why taking a calf when it's healthy in the fall is a positive thing from a management perspective.
All right. I think maybe they finally are informationed out, at least at the moment, till they get to mull it all over and watch this again. So we are done with our questions for the evening. Thank you so much, Lee, for all that great information. And again, please feel free to reach out to us anytime if you have more questions. Keep in mind those different deadlines that we have coming up in regards to this. I will make sure I will one more time put that adaptive unit hunt webpage link in the chat, so that way if you don't remember what some of the different dates are, you can follow up there. But also please make sure you pay attention to some of the regular deadlines and dates for swaps and things like that. We don't want you to miss it, so do call if you are having a hard time with any of that. So yeah, thank you, Lee. This was really very informative.
All right, you're welcome anytime.
All right, well, you all take care and have a good rest of your evening, and we'll hopefully get to see you all and chat again on August 11th at 6:30 is that mandatory meeting. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.